you. Okay, morning everybody. Welcome to our Primary Care Commissioning Committee. Apologies for being slightly late start this morning, one or two technical problems. But we're now live. So just a reminder to everybody before you speak or introduce your paper, if you could just say who you are and where you're from for the first time. You don't need to do it every time, just the first time. Be very useful for people. Equally, if people want to come in, it'd be really helpful for me if they put their hands up. I'm obviously Mike Barker, the place lead. I'm the chair of this particular committee, and the rest of the group here are members of the committee. Sharon, have we got any apologies today?
Yes, Charlotte Stevenson, John Patterson, Tamar Tariq and Catherine Madison.
And Dr. Brian Lewis as well, I think, is someone else we need to add. Are there any declarations of interest that we need to be aware of other than the ones that have been declared? No, so it's all declared, which is fine. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes, or is there anything that people would like to comment on the minutes or disagree with on the minutes before we approve them? No, so we'll take them as a correct and accurate record. And Nick, sorry.
Only that you spelt my name wrong. I was down as Mike Addy and I'm Nick Addy.
No problem, we'll get that amended, Nick.
Thank you very much.
Are we all happy to approve them subject to that one change? Brilliant, thank you. Then moving down to the action log from the minutes. Let me just blow my screen up a little bit. Marion, is there anything else we need to know, or Marion or Tarek, about Block Lane?
No, Mike. No, the practice is now successfully dispersed and patient safety registered elsewhere.
Okay, so we can close that action down completely then. The governance issues have been resolved and incorporated into new terms of reference. So I think we can close the governance bits down that was on for Nicola. I've not had a chance to catch up with John about the GP training and stuff. I don't know if you have, Tarek.
Yeah, we've communicated out to practices with the January date, but we're still going to undertake a review just to get some assurance on how they're being used. So everything's in place for 2024. Okay,
so that can be closed down. The Prime Medical Services SITREP pulse check. I think we can take that off the agenda now, Shaz, and trust that Simon will bring that forward as and when he needs to. And the Diabetes Associate Programme update, Gail. Anything else on that you want to talk about this time, or are you just going to schedule that into the business cycle?
Business cycle, but back for a full update in February, Mike. Thanks.
Okay, so we'll close that action down as well, Shaz. We don't need to see those things again, which then takes us into the agenda proper. And our first main substantive paper today is on primary care assurance, and Simon Walsh. Thank you.
Morning all, thanks Chair. Quality assurance paper, so just an update on any CQC inspections that have happened, and we've also looked at some of the appointments that have been available pre-pandemic and current, just with some noise around the amount of appointments that are available for patients. So CQC inspections, we've only had one since last meeting, which was at Leeds. Report was published on the 26th of October. Requires improvement in all 5 key areas. It was a follow-up inspection from around 12 months ago, where they also received requires improvement in all areas. However, the CQC did find that all the findings from last report were improved upon. However, this time it was more around the governance, pre-recruitment checks, numerous number of policies, risk assessments that weren't being followed or weren't completed accurately. So they've looked at hopefully trying to improve them. Staff inductions weren't being carried out correctly. The paperwork wasn't being carried out correctly. We filled in correctly. And some learning from the complaints and the significant events that the practice were taking. There's also 2 breaches, establish effective systems and processes for good governance, and ensure recruitment processes are established and operated effectively. We've been in to the practice recently. I'll pull up a report together for the next meeting. The practice have improved, or have looked to improve the clinical side from last side. They're now in the process of improving the policies, procedures, and the governance. Are we okay with that? You have any questions on that, Chair?
Anybody got any questions for Simon? Marion, you look like you're leaning in.
I think just to reinforce the message that Simon and Gail and John, our Associate Medical Director, did go out to do a detailed visit and audit with the practice, and we will stay in very close contact with this practice moving forward. This is the 2nd consecutive inspection that has been CQC requires improvement overall. And while they did satisfy many of in fact, the clinical areas that were highlighted last time, and I think that's really important to stress, they do continue to struggle around practice management and governance. Yeah. And I think they are possibly a little short-staffed. They have had the NHS England, through NHS England, they have had the GP Excellence team in twice now to support them. So unfortunately, it's unlikely that would be supported a 3rd time. So it's just to reinforce that message that we will be continuing to work with this practice very closely. Thanks.
Okay,
Just
thank you,
to
Marion.
add to that as well, sorry, Marion, after speaking to the practice, the GPX team have been invited in by Dr. Jalal in January as well.
Okay.
So I think they are staying in contact with them.
That's good.
Presumably, they're also leveraging support from the LMC. I know Dr. Vance is on the call today. Is there anything else that we can do to provide them with help, or is this now purely GPX, what's left of it, and LMC support? I presume we've exhausted our resource now on this.
So I think a lot of it is around staffing, as Marion said, and it's down to the practice now to recruit appropriately, which they are in the process of doing.
Okay. Are there any other questions on this particular report? No. Okay. Going to move us on to the next one, which I think is you again, Simon, isn't it? Yeah.
Sorry, Ted. There was some activity overview, the appointments just on that paper. I did sort of jump into any questions for the just for the CQC. If you wanted me to go over the activity overview.
I think the activity's as it is, isn't it? Really,
yeah.
It's pretty
There's
self-explanatory.
information there. Yeah, we can break it down further if we need. So the SITREP, jumping into the SITREP paper. Very similar story to last time. There has been some reduced reporting. Contacted most of the practices regarding this. Some of it is down to staffing and time to fill this in, although it does take a minimum amount of time. So they do know it's there. Have talked to them, make sure everything's okay. The number of practices reporting 7s or 8s is increasing, but generally stays around the same area. Most practices are around reporting a 6, so an increase, a small increase, but are capable or are coping with the increased demand. Any increase in demand, so 7s or 8s, we're contacting to see if there's any support we can offer, if there's anything significant that we need to be aware of. And at the minute there isn't. It's just patient demand, which they are coping with, but they are seeing an increase in.
Okay, thank you, Simon. So broadly a report that shows that primary care is busy, it's holding its own, though we've got no serious and significant capacity issues or access issues beyond normal limits. Are there any questions for Simon that people have? Okay, happy to accept that report then and move on, in which case that will take us to next agenda item, which is on the special allocation scheme. Gail, please.
Right, thank you, Chair. Morning, everybody. I'm Gail Letts, Head of Primary Care Assurance for the Oldham locality. So in terms of the SAS Special Allocation Scheme paper, it's a requirement of the National Policy and Guidance Manual for Primary Care Medical Services that PCCC are informed of any appeal that's made by a patient who's been removed under the SAS process, which is an immediate removal from the registered practice list as a result of violent or threatening behaviour. We've thankfully only had one case in the last couple of months, so the purpose of this paper is to inform PCC of the outcome of that appeal. Details of the events leading up to the removal are included in the paper. The patient did decline offers of support to provide a written statement. The appeal panel was held on the 23rd of November, and after considering all the content, the detail in the lead up to the removal, the panel were unanimous in their decision. Firstly, in terms that due process had been followed, and also that the outcome was justified, that the patient was appropriately removed. So the patient and the removing practice have both been had confirmation in writing of the outcome of the panel. So PCCC is just asked to note that information in terms of that particular removal. The second part of the paper is around some minor changes to the terms of reference for the appeals panel due to recent organisational changes and change in personnel in terms of some members of that panel. PCCC has been provided with a copy of the revised terms of reference and just asked to review and ratify those, please.
Okay. Any questions for Gail on that paper? Are we happy to ratify then? Presumably this goes then on to the GM forum from here. Okay, brilliant. Okay, approved then, Gail.
Thank you.
Okay, next item. You again, Gail, on the APMS. I suspect a more complicated paper this time.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So the purpose of this paper is to seek approval for PCCC's preferred option in terms of the next steps for provision at Lindley Medical Practice. The contract for the practice is currently held by Go2Doc under an APMS contract, which was originally procured with a 5-year term and an option to extend for a further 5 years. Current contract expires in September next year, but there is a contractual 6-month termination clause that we would need to enact if the option to extend isn't implemented. The two options that we have to consider are procurement of a new contract or dispersal of the list. Overall, current provision is good. CQC rating for the current provider is good. There are some opportunities to improve further, and these have been highlighted through the National GP survey. But overall, generally, the practice is in a good position. In terms of the two alternative options to the contract extension, as I say, we've got procurement of a new contract, which would be costly and may not necessarily attract credible bids from credible providers because the list size is relatively small. The timescale to complete a full formal procurement is likely to be 9 to 12 months, and that will extend beyond the current contract expiry date. The other alternative is list dispersal. So Lindley Medical Practice is cited in the ICC in the centre of Oldham. There are 5 other practices in that building. There are opportunities there to disperse the list to those practices without there being any significant impact in terms of travel for the existing registered list, but it will impact on the capacity of those practices. So the preferred option is the extension of the current contract. PCCC are asked to note the content of the paper and to approve the recommended option, which is to extend the existing contract.
Any questions from anybody? Marion, you're on mute.
Source one. Thank you, Gail. Very well presented. I think just to highlight that the Lindley CQC inspection is recent. They had a comprehensive inspection in 2022 and a further follow-up assessment in 2023. So they have been inspected under the new CQC regime, if you like, and that is a recent. While the list is not huge, it has steadily grown, you know, over the time that Lindley have held this contract. My view is at the moment, I would very much support the recommendation to extend. I think given the current pressures, not just over winter, but facing general practice more roundly, I think it would be good to support this provider who are providing a good quality service to patients at this time.
Okay, thanks, Marion. I suppose the question I've got that I can't see in the paper is there's absolutely no rationale for us to not extend the contract for 5 years, given that an APS contract is 5 and we let us 5 + 5. We have no rational. There is no rational argument for us to not extend for the second term. So I don't think I definitely wouldn't support a reprocurement just on that basis alone. I think we've got to exhaust the contractual options before we get to that point first. So everybody feels like it's in the same place from what Marion and I've just said. Are we comfortable to confirm the contract extension for a second term? And then this will clearly have to come back at the appropriate time in whatever guise the NHS is in 2029. That feels like forever away. Gail, we'll leave it in your capable hands to do what needs to be done with the practice and with other parts of the system to confirm it. But thank you. So that one's done, dusted, and agreed. Then moving down to next agenda item is the primary care escalation policy.
Thank you, Chair. So you'll be aware from previous papers, primary care assurance performance and quality improvement framework is part of the wider primary care assurance programme, and within that there is a process of escalation where patient safety or quality issues are identified in general practice. The escalation includes referral to the Primary Care Improvement Forum and the Performance Management Panel for more serious matters, and each of those forum and panels have their own respective terms of reference. These have recently been revised to reflect the recent organisational changes, so we're just bringing these to Primary Care Commissioning Committee to ask for ratification of both of these, with the minor changes that they've had.
Okay, thanks, Gail. I just have one observation, particularly on this paper. It's more around job titles than anything else. On page 54 of the pack, as it appears, there's reference to the Associate Medical Director for Oldham, which is fine, but Locality Director of Delivery and Transformation. It might be better if we just replace that title with Deputy Place Lead. I know Nicola held a kind of dual title. It's highly likely we're going to move away from that into just Deputy Place Lead, I think, going forward. So we might as well get that done now. I think if everybody's happy with the paper subject to that change, I don't think we need to bring the paper back. I think we could just make the change to reflect job title changes that are going on. Are people comfortable with that? And are there any other questions for Gail? Okay, you've got an agreement on that one, Gail. So bear with me, just scroll down the page to my agenda again. Next item then, I think, is Sophie. Gail again, sorry.
Morning.
Was it Sophie? I've clearly got a slightly different agenda on mine. Sophie then, on the ICO services.
It's fine, I can wait, sorry.
No, go on, Sophie, it's fine.
Yeah, I think this will be really quick. So I've circulated the paper, and this is around contracting and commissioning intentions for 24-25. So there'll be a lot of people on the call that will be aware and have been part of the Locality contracts and intentions so far, but there's one specific one that needed to be brought through Primary Care Commissioning Committee because it sits in locality budget and it is related to primary care commissioning, and that is the service which is Primary Eye Care Services, which is our optometry service in Oldham. So I won't give you War and Peace of the paper because everybody's had it, but essentially there is a proposal coming from Central Manchester that we roll on our contract for 24-25 with a direct award for 12 months. So that will mean the continuation of our minor eye service, it's cataract referral service, there's emergency eye service in there for 12 months, at which point we will be, during that 12-month period, we will go out to procurement around a new service, and that might well be that ends up being Primary Eye Care Services as it is, but just under procurement regulation, under the ICB now, we're not allowed to continue just to waiver services year after year in the same way that historically we perhaps have. So the ask is of Primary Care Committee to approve the extension of a direct award for 12 months for the contract, and that aligned with a procurement process that will start in April 24 for a new service from April 25. So I've kept that very basic. If people have got questions, then please do go ahead, but hopefully it's a simple, easy one.
Presumably on this, Sophie, we're tied into a GM contract. This is not an Oldham specific issue. So if we were to step outside the direction from the ICB, we would end up with a fairly significant problem and quite a serious amount of risk on ourselves.
Yeah, so it's an aggregated contract, a GM contract. The reason that we're making the decision is just because it's locality budget. I think if we stepped away from it, we'd be in a position whereby we would have a gap of service until a point at which new service is procured. And given ophthalmology provision, I would suggest that we don't want to be throwing any more heat at the fire in terms of people cropping up in acutes or in our independent sector providers. I think the only thing probably to mention in the paper is that it looks like it's slightly ahead of, we're forecasted to spend slightly more this year than we'd budgeted for. And I think some of that is to do with the fact that we've brought services online in year. So I'm not too concerned that it's spiralling in terms of activity, but that will be looked at in 24-25 anyway, in terms of, is there things that shouldn't be going there that are going there? Or is this just about the fact that we've always wanted to push more in that direction to stop the upward flow into the acute?
Okay, any questions for Sophie? Presumably you'll keep Sarah informed on the finances and we'll connect those two things together. So that's fine. Okay,
yep.
Approved, Sophie. That's done, dusted. And within 30 minutes, is there any other business that anybody needs to raise before we wrap the meeting up? Probably the quickest Primary Care Commissioning Committee we've had in about 4 years. Very straightforward agenda items today. Thank you all for that. My day's just got a lot easier. Thank you very much. Meeting's done. The next scheduled meeting is on the 15th of February. If anything changes to that cycle, we'll let you know, but otherwise that'll be the date of the next meeting. For those people that I think I'll see most people again. For those that I don't, have a really, really great Christmas, and we'll see you in the new year. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
We're done, Andy.